way things play out. All right, we are changing gears now, switching gears. And a few weeks back, I was speaking with Jonathan McLatchie, a Christian writer, international speaker, debater, apologist. And we got into a few subjects, and I wanted to bring him back to talk more about this academy that he does. As we're talking about how the gospel needs to be our foundation, how we need to get back to the gospel if we want to see the nation changed. The defense of the faith, apologetics, that remains a major issue. So, Jonathan, over in UK, over in England, thanks for joining us today on The Line of Fire.
Thanks, Dr. Brand, for having me back.
Hey, just a quick question for you. I know you can most accurately give your own view, but generally speaking, as your British colleagues look over at America, what's their take on what's happening with our candidates right now? Do you hear much talk? And can you tell me how we're being viewed on the other side of the pond right now?
Well, in the midst of the presidential campaign, that's the race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I know a lot of people in Britain think that it's a sad state of affairs that the race is between those two individuals, because and I think people in America are really faced with the difficult decision of the better of two evils.
Yeah, got it. No surprise in terms of how things are being viewed. And then just on your end, how are things now playing out in the post-Brexit decision? Are things calming down, or is it still as volatile as ever?
Well, actually, a lot of the people that voted to depart from the European Union are regretting their decision, and some of the arguments that the Brexit campaign utilized have turned out to be not as convincing as they were before the referendum took place. For example, the immigration issue turns out not to be as strong, because the European Union, in order to keep the free market, required that the UK keep their current immigration policy and things like that. And so that means that immigration was one of the key central arguments for the Brexit campaign. So there's a lot of people that are feeling regret over their decision to leave the EU, but certainly it's a very hot topic still over here.
Interesting. Well, we're watching with great interest over here in the States. All right, Apologetics Academy. I had the joy of joining you some weeks back talking about Messianic prophecy, and we spent a couple hours. I was online in the States. You were hosting in the UK, and then people joined us from different nations, several dozen people, maybe close to 40 people. We ended up having back and forth Q&A and some mini debates in that respect. So tell our listeners about the Apologetics Academy, why you started it, who's invited to it, what kind of speakers you've had.
Well, the Apologetics Academy really has been running since, I think, February of this year. And the Apologetics Academy basically seeks to educate, train, disciple, and equip the church at a personal level. So by hosting weekly webinars, online webinars with leading scholars and thinkers, Christians are provided access to world-class intellects that they probably otherwise would never meet or have opportunity to interact with. And so in addition to Christian speakers, I actually often bring on and invite non-Christian speakers, such as atheists and Muslims, to present their challenges and their critiques of the Christian worldview. And this is followed by a live interactive Q&A using audio and video. And so the Apologetics Academy thus provides opportunity for experienced apologists to sharpen their skills in debate by interacting one-on-one with some of the leading critics of the faith. And then the less experienced Christians have the option to sit back and witness the back and forth and thus reap the benefits of the expertise and experience of other Christians. And so it allows it allows Christians to have access to Christian scholars as well as interact with the arguments of non-Christian scholars as well.
And what kind of fruit have you seen? How has it helped those who have been participating? What kind of reports are you getting back?
Well, it's all been very positive. The webinar has been very successful, and people really appreciate that I bring in viewpoints from across the theological and philosophical spectrum to present their case, and then we have open dialogue, critique, debate, discussion, and it encourages non-Christians to come and sit in and listen as well. And we just get some really good discussion. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of good feedback from it, and also on the YouTube channel, because I record these sessions and put them on YouTube. And the YouTube videos have been getting a lot of downloads. The most we've had so far, when Matt Dillahunty, the atheist, was on, we had 64 people attend the webinar, and then 10,000 people, or 10,500 people have viewed it on my YouTube channel. About 40 or 50,000 have viewed it on Matt's channel. So these videos are getting a lot of downloads on YouTube as well.
Now, why is it so important that we tackle these issues? We believe in Jesus. We believe in the Bible. We live godly lives. We try to reach our neighbors and friends with the gospel. Who needs all this other high-level intellectual stuff? Why get distracted? Some would think that way.
Well, I think in our culture today, there's an increasing need for Christians to be educated on apologetics and the rational defense of the faith, particularly for people who are going to be college students and are going to be encountering and interacting with the typical challenges that they are confronted with in college and university. And one of the beauties of the Apologetics Academy is that they can actually be presented with those challenges from people who actually hold those positions, and they can be inoculated from those views rather than insulated from them. So when they come to the college classroom and they're confronted with these anti-Christian viewpoints, they've actually already encountered them and they've seen them engaged with at a high level.
Now, in your view, obviously you have expertise in a number of subjects. You're working now on a PhD in cell biology. You have a master's degree in evolutionary biology, second master's degree in medical and molecular bioscience, and a little later we're going to talk about the subject of intelligent design. But then you debated atheists on wider issues, you debated Muslims and others. In your mind, as you have watched these debates as a host, where has the Christian side scored the best points? Obviously, it's a subjective answer as a believer, but maybe you could say what's played out with the audience. But where have the best points been scored to say, yes, we're on the side of truth?
Yeah, we've had a few atheist guests on. We've had David Fitzgerald, for example. We've had Matt Dillahunty. We've had Aaron Ra on, and we're going to have some more atheist guests in the future, such as Robert Price of the Jesus Seminar, and others. For example, when we had David Fitzgerald on, who's an atheist, Jesus mythicist, who thinks Jesus never existed, and we had some really high-level scholars in the audience, including Dr. Timothy McGrew, who's a very well-known philosopher, expert on Bayesian probability theory. And we had Chris Winchester, who is almost finished his PhD in New Testament studies and very, very knowledgeable, particularly in Richard Carrier type arguments. We had some other scholars in the audience, and they did a really good job of I think, dismantling the Jesus mythicist position. We've had some really good interaction with Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty, and it's conducted in a very cordial and professional manner as well. It's very structured, and people are free to interact live with the speaker. We use a professional webinar platform, so people can actually raise their hand, and then I promote them to be live and interact live with the speaker by engaging their webcam and microphone. Or if they want to, they can simply submit questions anonymously, or just participate in the chat window. So there's a number of ways that people can participate, and it's just really great to be able to.
Yeah, tell you what, hold that right there. We'll be right back. You've got to tell people how they can participate. Friend, no cost involved. This Saturday, you can be part of an online Apologetics Academy every Saturday. We'll tell you how when we come back.
Fire we want, for fire we bleed. Stand the fire.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get into the Line of Fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
All right, you've got a free invitation to join an Apologetics Academy this weekend, Saturday. It is free. It is online. All you need is a proper online hookup with your computer, and you could sit in and be in the midst of high-level, excellent discussion, interaction with top scholars, theologians, atheists, skeptics, and with other believers weighing in as well. And you say, I'm not that well-versed. Well, you don't have to do anything. You just have to listen and enjoy. My guest, Jonathan McLatchie, leads the Apologetics Academy. If you go to apologetics-academy.org, apologetics-academy.org, you'll find out everything you need to know there. Jonathan, who are some of the guests coming up in the next few weeks?
Well, this coming Saturday, we have Alistair Smith from the SOLA Centre for Public Christianity in Scotland, who's going to be talking to us about the case against same-sex marriage. And then the following week, we have top biblical scholar Dr. Michael Acuna coming to talk to us about are there differences in the Gospels, which is the topic of his latest research. Michael Acuna, of course, being the famous resurrection scholar as well. And then the following week, on August 6th, we have Dr. James White coming on, who I know is a buddy of yours, Dr. Brown, and he is going to be talking to us about controlled versus uncontrolled textual transmission in regards to the Quran and New Testament. And so he'll be weighing up the advantages and disadvantages, respectively, of a controlled versus uncontrolled mode of textual transmission. So that will be also very fascinating. And then the following week after...
go ahead.
The following week after that, we have Wesley Huff, who's going to talk to us about responding to Bart Ehrman's misquoting Jesus as well. Go ahead.
Excellent. And what time does this take place?
This takes place every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, which is 8 p.m. here in the UK, or 2 p.m. Central, or 12 noon Pacific.
Got it. All right, so this is a time you can be listening Saturday afternoons, apologetics-academy.org. All right. Let's focus on a specialty of yours in these few more minutes that we have. And intelligent design. Let's say you're talking to someone, maybe with a college education, but someone who hasn't specialized in science or anything like that. So you want this to be intelligible for them, but you want it to be something that they can take in the massive scope. Take a couple of minutes to give some of the strongest arguments as to how we can see there must have been an intelligent designer behind the universe or behind human life.
Sure. Well, the intelligent design is basically the quest for patterns in nature, which are the hallmarks of intelligent causality. Intelligent design is predicated upon the historical abductive method of inferring to the best explanation for multiple competing hypotheses. And so when we find certain telltale features in living systems, such as the information content of life's hereditary molecules, DNA and RNA, we infer that the most causally sufficient explanation for that type of effect is conscious, rational, deliberative agency by virtue of the fact that intelligent causality is the only known type of cause or category of explanation known to produce the type of effect that we're trying to explain. DNA is involved in many things within the cell, and one of the things that it does is specify the sequential arrangement of amino acids that form the subunits of proteins. And there are the DNA is taken and it's transcribed by an enzyme complex called RNA polymerase, and it's transcribed into what's called messenger RNA, which is a single-stranded RNA polymer, which is then shuttled outside of the nuclear pore complex, outside the nucleus, and taken to a ribosome. And at the ribosome, which is a two-part chemical factory, it is translated into proteins. And so there's 3 character words that run along the messenger RNA transcript. And these 3 character words are called codons. And each codon will specify an amino acid. And so the sequential arrangement of the nucleotide subunits, the letters or the chemical subunits along the messenger RNA transcript will then determine the sequential arrangement of the amino acid subunits. And so that is information. That's what we mean when we talk about information, specified complexity. And when we look at the structures of proteins, and there's been experimental work done on this, you can actually, there's experimental evidence to suggest that the ratio of functional to non-functional protein structures within the vast array of combinatorial possibilities, ways of arranging those amino acid subunits, is astronomically small. So finding the functional protein structures within combinatorial space is like searching for a tiny, tiny needle in an enormous haystack and having a very limited time to do so. Remember that natural selection only is effective once you have functional utility and once you've actually found these functional protein structures. But if they're astronomically rare and isolated within that vast array of combinatorial possibilities, that combinatorial space, if you will, then that presents a significant challenge to the evolutionary paradigm. And then there's molecular machines in the cell. There's things like the bacterial divisome, for example, what allows bacterial cells to divide. The eukaryotic mitotic spindle apparatus, which is involved in cell division in higher life forms. These things are extraordinary feats of engineering and design prowess. There's various challenges to the evolution paradigm coming from all sorts of different fields. One problem is the waiting time problem, waiting for the emergence of coordinated mutations which are required to explain certain adaptations. A coordinated mutation can be defined as when you require two or more coincident genetic changes that only together produce an adaptive phenotypic effect that allows for selection to operate. Remember that evolution is supposed to proceed by random mutation and natural sexual selection or genetic drift and so forth. But selection can only work on mutations with a positive or negative adaptive value. And at least some adaptive advantages require two or more coordinating mutations. And this gives rise to the waiting time problem. That all mutations have two time constraints that depend on population size and generation time. One of them is the waiting time for a mutation to occur, and the second of those is the waiting time for the fixation of this mutation. It's not enough to just get a mutation. It has to become fixed. It has to go from being the lone individual out there to becoming the norm that's established. And it turns out that the history of life doesn't really provide the resources for evolution to accommodate these waiting times.
Right. So just and obviously you've said a lot in a short period of time, and some folks' heads are completely spinning in terms of even trying to grasp what's being said, and you're still dumbing it down. In other words, this is extraordinarily complex. We're talking about extraordinary engineering, and many scientists say, yeah, if you only had 14 billion years for this to happen, that's not enough time. That's how they'd look at it. In other words, it's there would be too many coincidences taking place for this to be explained any other way except for divine causality. Hey, friends, check out the Apologetics Academy, apologetics-academy.org. Join in. It's absolutely free. You'll find your mind stretched. You'll be edified. You'll enjoy the presentations. You will learn a lot from them. You hear that music? That means we are out of time. Check out the website, AskDrBrown.org. Plenty of resources waiting for you. My bottom line, we bow down before a sovereign God. If he could create the universe, he can order our political scene.